Hello, my name is Kevin Boyle and I am the author of Hit It With a Bigger Hammer. In my last two videos, I discussed my proposal to the ICC and New Zealand Cricket to prevent match fixing and what emerged thereafter. I have also discussed in previous videos how security management in commerce and sport does not prevent corruption, and when it fails, a bigger and bigger hammer is applied. This is precisely what happened with cricket. After 10 years of the Anti-Corruption and Security Unit, ACSU, match fixing was still ongoing in cricket, and its founder, Lord Condon, came out of retirement to defend it after the Pakistan spot fixing scandal in 2010. One might wonder how the ACSU could be defended after it not only failed to prevent the match fixing, but it also failed to detect it. The Pakistan events were exposed by a News of the World sting, and the players were prosecuted by the police in the jurisdiction of the offending, all of which questioned the role and need for the ACSU. But the policing ideology is greatly assisted by being the sole purveyor of expert opinion and advice around policing that is not challenged or questioned. Lord Condon blamed the ICC for not involving the players in managing the match fixing, suggesting this was integral to its prevention. Apart from being a surprising endorsement of my solution, the ICC would have been confused, as it would have believed it had employed Lord Condon to prevent the match fixing, and if that meant involving the players, then it would have expected Lord Condon to have achieved this. And neither the ICC nor Lord Condon understood that it was impossible to involve the players under the policing ideology. And in the ensuing confusion, Lord Condon recommended an even bigger hammer be applied to the match fixing. After blaming the ICC, Lord Condon went on to recommend new, more draconian measures that would potentially criminalise the administrators of cricket if they did not employ the ACSU. He recommended that the administrators be now made accountable if they did not do all they could to prevent the players from being drawn into corruption. This would raise the bar for innocent administrators who would now be criminalised, along with the innocent players who do not report approaches. A bigger hammer indeed. He supported his recommendation by referring to the new Bribery Act in Britain that holds employers accountable if they do not do all they can to prevent their employees from being drawn into corruption. The intention of the new Bribery Act in Britain is clearly to protect the employees in the same way the Health and Safety Act prevents workplace injury. Making employers in Britain criminally liable if they don't employ best practices is also an example of applying a bigger hammer, again made necessary because existing methods cannot achieve satisfactory prevention outcomes. But the compliance element of this statute now gives rise to the question of what constitutes best prevention practice. Lord Condon obviously believes his security management was the best practice in cricket, and his reference to Britain's Bribery Act inferred British commerce also employed security management. Whilst this scenario clearly demonstrates how the policing ideology is grown and perpetuated throughout society, it also provides the opportunity to challenge security management as the best practice to prevent the corruption. It gives rise to defining what constitutes employers doing all they can to prevent their employers being drawn into corruption, or what defines prevention. My solution answers these questions, and it was proposed to the ICC because it proves the best practice does not and cannot prevent corruption. Now, this now presents as a seminal case study to compare the two different ideologies and their respective abilities to prevent. Because British lawmakers have written this compliance into criminal statutes, it now behoves them to consider not only what best prevents corruption, but what doesn't prevent it, and also to consider if a possible contingent liability exists that would allow a defence to employers who are prosecuted when their employees fall into corruption if a failed practice is used. It might also provide employees grounds to sue their employer if they so fall. My solution puts all on notice that a potential contingent liability does exist with security management in the prevention role, and this thereby compels due diligence to be conducted into its efficacy. This would not have been envisioned by Lord Condon when he made his recommendations to the ICC. If security management was now deemed by British lawmakers to be an unsafe prevention practice, and my solution supplanted it, this would indeed be an unintended consequence of Lord Condon trying to hit match fixing with a bigger hammer. It would be hugely ironical. It is important to note here that my prevention solution would only supplant security management as a first responder, and it would collaborate with security management or policing if prevention protocols failed and prosecution became necessary. In this way, optimal overall crime management outcomes will be achieved. And it would also mean, ironically, that Lord Condon's belated aspiration to involve the players in managing the match fixing has been finally achieved. I would advise those entities in British commerce that are overseen by the new Bribery Act to seriously review their legal status in light of these circumstances, and to consider my solution as an alternative that does prevent. Existing resources can be retrained in the prevention protocols prior to the need for prosecution. Britain is a world leader in innovation that is once again demonstrated in the groundbreaking conditions of its new Bribery Act. Other crime prevention initiatives, like its anti-social behaviour orders, or ASBOS, and Crime Stoppers that it resurrected from a failed American beginning, are two innovative initiatives that are also featured in my book, Hit It With a Bigger Hammer. Both are extensions of the policing ideology, and ASBOS only failed because it was too closely associated. This was not considered a reason for its failure by British lawmakers, who simply recognised its failure and are presently looking for an alternative to replace it. ASBOS was a good idea, and it experienced significant levels of success, as it was hailed by some who used it as allowing them to reclaim their communities. My solution was also similarly acclaimed when it was introduced, so I knew how that felt. However, ultimately, ASBOS could not overcome the code of silence around offending and the retaliatory consequence of reporting offenders. Whilst ASBOS is in the domain of public policing, as opposed to the more controlled areas like commerce and sport, my solution's success in these areas will incrementally morph into public policing, and this will be greatly assisted by the gains already made by initiatives like ASBOS. I would appeal to British lawmakers to consider my solution to assist the resurrection of ASBOS by replacing the policing ideology with prevention, which will then overcome the code of silence that protects the offenders. It is the same with Crime Stoppers, a private organisation that publicly seeks information from those with knowledge of offending. Crime Stoppers is also inhibited by the policing ideology it embraces, and although it guarantees confidentiality to those who report crime, it is no different to a private investigator's confidential hotline or a confidential hotline employed by chartered accountants or auditors who provide a similar service to their clients to detect fraud. This is still tantamount to dobbing people in, and it carries the same social stigma and consequence attached to the code of silence. It would be mutually beneficial if my solution could effect a collaborative partnership with Crime Stoppers or any other organisation soliciting information on crime and corruption. How more effective would Crime Stoppers or these other organisations be if they could overcome the code of silence by losing the policing prosecution mantle and adopting a prevention-driven solution? Indeed, if such an association were possible with Crime Stoppers, it would be able to provide this prevention solution with an established global infrastructure, and perhaps of more importance, an already close collaboration with policing. Policing is not inclusive and does not normally collaborate with private enterprise. However, Crime Stoppers proves such a collaboration with policing can be successful where common goals exist. What would first need to be overcome is policing's acceptance of my solution, and for it to give up the reins it presently holds over the prevention management. This might more readily be facilitated through a partnership with Crime Stoppers, as it already collaborates with policing. Indeed, policing might welcome my solution that would allow it to concentrate all of its resources on its core enforcement roles of detection, investigation, and prosecution. Such a triumvirate collaboration would indeed provide the opportunity and potential for optimum societal crime management outcomes. So overall, an association with Britain might prove to be pivotal to the successful adoption and growth of this solution. In this video alone, I have proposed it as a remedy to British Commerce's potential contingent liability arising from its new Bribery Act, resurrecting its antisocial behaviour orders initiative, and to Lord Condon and his association with international cricket, of which the England team is formally held to be one of the big three influences in cricket. And I have yet to mention another British association that I will be discussing in my next video. Lord Coe is president of the International Association of Athletics Federations, the IAAF, that continually struggles with corruptive influences in the various sports it governs. I would propose this prevention solution to Lord Coe, who might consider advocating it to those sports. In my next video, I will discuss the solution's promotion to the IAAF, to the Fédération Internationale de Football Association, FIFA, and to finally the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, that also employs the policing ideology, and that more significantly, once publicly asked, how do we encourage clean athletes to lead in the fight against doping? A common fault and a recurring theme, don't you think? Until then.